Hello everybody, this is Yoko's Otaku Treasures. Damn it, what the fuck? Don't do that. There we go. Okay, we're going to continue with this. Lutz, Growing Healthily. A previously unpublished short story from the online collection set midway through Part 4, Volume 5. Lutz brings back souvenirs from Groschel and takes a trip around the lower city. He sees Dirk and Conrad in the orphanage, Otto and Karina's daughter, Renate, and Gunther and Effa's son, Camille. Everyone is growing healthily. I wrote this story during the publication of the web novel. It spent so long writing exclusively about nobles that I suddenly found myself craving a change of pace. It was fun writing about all the kids growing up. Mine's high beast landed at the temple, having brought us all the way from Groschel. She wouldn't be able to unmake it while there were still things inside, so we Gutenbergs climbed out and started unloading the luggage. I would have appreciated a moment to stretch and enjoy the freedom, but with Fran and the other attendants helping us, there wasn't enough time. We were all in a big hurry. Everyone's belongings had been moved, Lady Rosemine. An attendant called when we were done. Mine put her high beast away, then she greeted everyone and entered the temple. She'd seemed a little tired to me, but I wasn't too concerned. Fran had noticed too, and I trusted that he would make her rest. As soon as mine was out of sight, we started sorting through the luggage. Let's keep the Inks Workshop things with yours. Only whatever's too heavy to carry. We Gutenbergs would put our belongings on a wagon and headed to the Plantin company while the Grey Priest took whatever was going to the workshop. Shouting out instructions wasn't an option when there were nobles around. This is for the workshop, this is for Zack, and this is for the Plantin company, Ingo muttered, looking thoroughly impressed as he examined the organized stacks. Alright, the rest should be easy. Mine had wanted the luggage to be properly organized, so she had ensured that each and every box was fixed with a note describing its contents. Such labels were standard practice for the Plantin company, these were far more detailed. Mine had told us to write them when we first traveled to Ilgner, and while I considered it a pain at the time, I couldn't help but recognize their worth. Lost belongings were a thing of the past, and the system still worked even when we went to other places with larger groups. The others must have shared my appreciation because the Plantin company now used labels far more than it used to. Well, that should do it. Alright, let's go home. See you at the meeting. I'll send some people to fetch our things for the ink workshop. See you later. Once most of the luggage was organized, the Gutenbergs departed with only as much as they could carry. We had plans to reconvene at the Plantin company for a meeting, but for now, everyone just wanted to hurry home to their families. The others went on their way at a brisk pace. Damien climbed in next to the coachman and asked to be taken to the Plantin company. I watched him out of the corner of my eye while reaching for the boxes meant to be taken to the workshop. Sure you don't want to ride back? Damn it. Don't want to ride back, Lutz, he asked. There isn't even room for me. I'll just walk home. After I get this luggage to the workshop, of course. Gil chuckled and slapped one of the boxes. The youngins need their souvenirs, too. Inside were copies of a book we'd already given to Mine. Collections of stories from the craftspeople in Groschel, made to test the presses and teach the workers how to print. Mine, who was using her book deposit system, or whatever it was called, to gather together all of the country's written material, had jumped for joy when we gave her the thin volume, and immediately hugged it to her chest. Of course she would. She's happy about any book. Now that we'd stopped meeting in her hidden room, it was hard to catch glimpses of the true Mine. Her clothes and speech almost made her seem so proper. One thing that never changed, though, was the face she made upon seeing a book. Once the luggage was safely in the workshop, the Grey Priests all dispersed. They had to wash themselves before dinner, apparently. Gil and I reached into one of the boxes and pulled out the books from Groschel. Mine and the other Gutenbergs had received their copies, leaving us with 9. This one's for the workshop, and this one's yours, I explained. Because we'd made them as part of a test run, we had no plans to sell them. We could store the one in the workshop in case we ever decided to add its stories to a new book, and would distribute the others for personal use. Alright, let's go hand them out, I said. Dirk and Conrad are gonna love them, Gil added, and we started making our way to the orphanage. Oh, Gil, won't you get yelled at if you don't act all polite again, I asked as our destination came into view. After half a year in Groschel, he'd taken to speaking like its commoners. He let out an annoyed sigh. Man, it was filthy and smelly in Groschel, but I enjoyed it. Meanwhile, I'm going straight back to the lower city. Gil glared at me. I shrugged. We laughed together. Then we whipped ourselves back into shape. Gutenberg spoke with nobles on some occasions, and with commoners on others. Being able to swap between personas was important so that we could adapt to whatever we ended up. Hello, everyone, Gil intoned. We have returned from Groschel with souvenirs for Dirk and Conrad. Damn it. Oh my, they're sure to be delighted, Wilma replied. Dirk, Conrad, Gil and let's have some come with souvenirs. The pair raced over, dragging Delia along with them. They had grown a lot in the past 6 months. Conrad in particular had gone from being extremely malnourished to looking as plump and healthy as a child his age should. His expression was brighter to boot. "Welcome back, Gil," they said. "Lutz, what did you bring?" "We aren't going to sell these books. Treat them well," I explained, then handed them a volume each. While they looked up at me with sparkling eyes, Dirk turned to Gil, happily clutching his book. "Now that you're back, we can go to the forest again." "Unfortunately not," he replied. "There's too much for me to do in the workshop." Gil was busy. He needed to give a detailed report on Groschel before winter socializing, check how much progress the workshop had made, and then assign winter handiwork accordingly. He didn't have time to take anyone to the forest. "Gil, can you really not make time?" Delia asked, concern tinting her eyes when she saw Dirk and Conrad slump over in disappointment. The workshop had enough on its plate with the rush to print goods in time for winter socializing. On top of that, with people lost to Groschel and winter handiwork, there were especially few chances for anyone to venture to the forest. Dirk and Conrad were the only kids in the orphanage too young to be apprentices, so they were essentially being left for their own devices. Being stuck inside must be awful. "Gil won't have time, but I can take you," I said. "Let's go tomorrow." "What? Are you sure, Lutz?" Delia asked, her eyes widening. Truth be told, I had a few days off now that we'd returned from our long trip, and I knew my family would make me help out with winter preparations as soon as I got home. Going to the forest was a convenient means of escape. "Yeah," I said, "they can help with winter prep. It's killing 2 birds with 1 stone. "Yippee! I'll do my best. Thank you, Lutz." Giddy with excitement, Dirk and Kara made me promise again and again that I would go with them to the forest. Soon enough, it was time for me to leave. "If you'll excuse me, I need to get going so I can give Master Benno a report," I said. "Don't forget to be ready for the forest tomorrow." "I'm more worried about you forgetting. See you tomorrow, Lutz." I exited the orphanage with Gil, who walked me to the gate to the lower city. He stopped beside it and sighed. "Sorry, Lutz, I didn't mean to eat into your time off. It's fine. Better to visit the forest than be worked to the bone at home." On that note, I passed through the gate and headed to the lower city. It was so much cleaner than the filth-covered streets of Groschel. Even seemed to glow in comparison. My shoulders relaxed and an unconscious "I'm finally home" escaped me. I passed the Offmar Company, which was also the Guildmaster's home, and turned a corner to the Plantin Company. I entered through the back with 5 volumes in hand. "Hi, Mr. Mark. Is Master Benno here?" "Welcome back, Lutz," Mark replied, turning to face me. "The Master's receiving a report from Damien, who returned ahead of you. He eagerly awaits your input." I realized then that Mark had been speaking with a woman I didn't recognize. Her reddish-brown hair was done up, which meant she was of age, but she was clearly still young. I was most surprised to see her wearing the uniform of a Plantin Company Lahange. She must have joined while I was in Groschel. "Do we have a new Lahange?" I asked. "Yes, allow me to introduce her. This is Corinne, the daughter of a visiting merchant from Klassenburg." Oh, this again. Here we go. The whole thing with them trying to set up Benno with her, which obviously Benno didn't want because he's still lamenting his lost love. And I'm assuming he's going to be a bachelor for life. Due to certain circumstances, we are going to be housing her until next summer. Corinne, this is Lutz, one of our Laharl apprentices. He just returned from a business trip. Corinne and I greeted each other. What kind of circumstances would result in a Klassenburg merchant staying with the Plantin Company? Her beauty caught my attention first, then the strength of her will. She must have been pretty domineering to have come all the way to Ehrenfest. I assumed she had the training of a proper merchant from a greater duchy, but her blue eyes sparkled with curiosity. In an instant, Corinne's focus switched to the books I was carrying. She reminded me of a cat that had just spotted its prey. Mark must have noticed too as he smiled and stepped between us. "Yeah, keep her away from the books." "Lutz, I must insist that you report to Master Benno," he said. "Now." "Understood," I replied with a nod, then immediately headed to Benno's office. Damien was gone by the time I arrived. "Hey, Lutz, finally back?" Benno asked, looking up and grinning at me. "I trust everything went well?" "It did. The nobles in Groschel were far less cooperative than in Ilgner and Haldensdale, so I thought there might be problems. Lady Rosamund kept everything in order, though. I'd started to worry when we found out the Geban scholars in charge paid no attention to the lower city's craftspeople, but mine had used her authority as the Archduke's adopted daughter to bridge the gap between them and steer us away from disaster. Having such a strong supporter had once again proved to be a tremendous boon. I thought back to seeing Mai perform her duties as a member of the Ehrenfest Archducal family. Rather than seeming like the Mai I remembered, she exhibited the aura of a noble with many responsibilities to bear. "I'm giving you 3 days off," Benno told me. "Go spend it with your family." "Thank you. Before I go, here, we made this book in Groschel to test out its printing press." Benno accepted the book and started thumbing through it. "I wish to give one to Renate of the Gilberta Company," I said. "May I?" "Sure, she's going to love it. I might as well come with you." Benno put away some documents and stood up. He had taken to visiting the Gilberta Company whenever he could to help train Renate as its successor. Otto had tried on his own, but he was too soft on his daughter to be a reliable mentor. Of course. Lutz, about Corinne. Once we were on the road, Benno explained why Corinne was staying at the Plantin company. She had come to Ehrenfest on business with her father, only for him to leave her behind. He wasn't due to return until next year. Was she entrusted to us so she could learn from our store, I asked. You look way too pleased right now. Of course, if my hunch is right, it means a Klassenburg merchant recognized your skills. A merchant from a greater duchy choosing the Plantin company as somewhere for his daughter to study was truly special, or so I thought. But Benno scratched his head and gave me a conflicted smile. More likely than not, having her join us as a Lahand was just the best way for her daughter to gather information. Her dad to gather information. I can't even guess how much she's going to get from us. Weren't you aware of that when you agreed to let her stay? Benno heaved a sigh and said there are extenuating circumstances at work. He refused to elaborate, but I could tell that Corinne was a pretty sharp thorn in his side. Lutz, Uncle Benno, Renate explained, pushing past the servant lady who had come to greet us. Her hair done in a half-up style, closely resembling Benno's in its color, while her facial features reminded me of Karina's. You sure have grown, Benno said, picking up the girl as she squealed with joy. Side by side, they looked a lot like father and daughter. That reminds me, Benno used to carry mine all over the place. She was just too slow on her own 2 feet. Renate was about as tall as mine had been then. She had learned to speak before Dirk or Camille, who were roughly her age, and didn't slip shy away from putting that skill to use. Every time I came here, she was chattering about one thing or another. Benno had once said that she was only ever quiet when eating or sleeping, so she's a little chatterbox. So, what have you learned lately? Well, Renate settled into Benno's lap and twittered away. He listened to her every word, interjecting only to teach her extra details, and asked questions to make sure she really understood what she was telling him. Their discussion was almost entirely about business. Renate's education had started much earlier than my own, so that she could one day serve as her family's successor. Today, Karina was teaching Renate how to tell good cloth from bad. Renate's 1-year-old brother, Nut. Oh, they had another kid! Nice! Took up most of their parents' time, so she dearly looked forward to these lessons. They were the only chance she got at some alone time with her mother. Mother and father are so obsessed with Nut they don't pay any attention to me. They never listen to what I want to say. Well, that's how it is. Being the oldest, I went through the same thing. Yeah, I can agree with that one, except there's a bigger age difference. Yeah, there is a bigger age difference. How old is Renate at this point? I don't know. I'm assuming at least 4 or 5, maybe. So maybe she's around same age as she, about the same age difference that I had. But it wouldn't have been as bad if it had been like a smaller age difference, like maybe a year or 2. Did you hate being the oldest too, Uncle Benno? Sometimes. Benno turned to me and gestured me over without missing a beat, like he'd been waiting for Renate to run out of business-related things to talk about and start complaining about her little brother. He wanted me to help change the subject by showing Renate the book I brought her. Here, Renate, a new book, I said. It contains stories from Groschel, the province I was staying in. Thanks, Lutz. This one's kinda thin. As a test project, it really was thinner than the books I'd given Renate in the past. Still, it didn't contain any weird poems or complex noble euphemisms. So I suspected she'd enjoy it more than the others. It's full of stories from Groschel's craftspeople, so it should make for a pretty fun read, I explained. There's no art, though. Okay, I'll ask Mom to read it to me, Renate said, happily clutching the book to her chest. I can't wait. The stories you bring are always so fun. A babysitter then arrived with Nut, who'd just woken up from a nap and seemed as energetic as ever. He had recently learned to walk, and the babysitter joked that she dared not let him out of her sight. I was watching Nut stumble around and then fall on his butt when the door suddenly opened and Tuuli came in. I was wondering why Mrs. Karina suddenly asked me to come back, she exclaimed upon seeing me. Welcome home, Lutz. Yeah, I just got back from Groschel. I got you this book as a souvenir. It was made to test a printing press, so it's one of only about a dozen in the world. Pretty rare, huh? Tuuli accepted the book, leaving me with 2 more, one for her little brother and one I planned to keep. Thanks, she said. I'll read it later. I was going to give one to Camille when we finished here. Want to come with me? Not today, she replied, shaking her head. I have work tomorrow, and the workshop is swamped with Lady Rosemine's orders. As it turned out, mine had chosen Eva's cloth during the dyeing contest and then ordered a hairpin to match. Tuuli spoke in a bright voice and made it clear how proud she was, but I could tell she was exhausted. If the orders were meant for winter, then she was almost out of time. That winter socializing thing is coming up real soon, right? I asked. Have you not finished yet? We're done with her winter... Damn it. We're done with her winter clothes, but our work's still far from over. Last year, Lady Rosamund brought us orders for the royal family. Something of that nature is bound to happen again, and we won't be equipped for it unless I get a head start and finish her spring hairpin too. Last year was a total mess. You know, good point. Mine's gonna cause trouble, that much is obvious. Though we couldn't predict what that trouble would involve, we knew it was lurking right around the corner. We needed to be ready to respond to whatever sudden orders came our way. For safety's sake, I'm preparing for every outcome I can think of, Tuuli said. I still need to finish Lady Rosemine's spring hairpin, but I made extras of the armband she wanted for her school friends, and designed several more hairpins in case we receive another order from the royal family. Her achievements made it clear that she was Mine's big sister. She couldn't have been more ready for whatever Mine was about to spring on us. Well, alright, good luck. Why not take it easy today? You did just get back from a long trip. I plan to. I do have some free time, but I really need to get back to working on Lady Rosemine's hairpin, Tuuli muttered. She waved me farewell, then headed to her room. Benno gave a slight shrug. He must have been listening to our conversation. You can head home, Lutz, he said. I want to spend some more time with Renate. Thanks, if you'll excuse me. Later, Lutz, Renate shouted, waving to me. I returned the gesture before going back to the Plantin company. There, I went to my room to put away my book and change clothes. I spent so little time at Airfest these days. Mine's orders kept me far too busy that I rarely ever wore my hand-me-downs. Now they didn't even fit me anymore. The trousers were too short and the shirts were tight around the shoulders. On my way home, I took a detour to the Central Plaza to get gifts for my family. Camille was sure to love the book I was about to give him, but my brother Ralph would much rather have some sausages. He was a growing boy with an appetite as large as my own. From the Central Plaza, I went to Mine's place, part of my usual routine. I knocked and said my name, and Camille opened the door with an excited cry. If not for his eyes, which reminded me of Mine's, he would have been a spitting image of his father. Welcome back, Lutz. How was your trip? Did you have fun? Look, Camille, I got a book for you. It's full of stories from the craftspeople of Grotto told us. Woohoo! Camille had grown up playing with the books and toys Mine made for children, so he turned into a bookworm exactly as she'd planned. Ha ha ha, boy! Eva stopped cooking and turned to look at me just as I gave Camille his present. Thanks as always, Lutz, she said. Hang on, let's make sure. You're Lady Rosemine's dyer now, right? I asked. Tuuli said as much when I stopped by the Gilberta Company. Eva smiled at me, her expression a mixture of happiness and disappointment, and shook her head. No, not yet. Lady Rosamine hasn't made up her mind. She wants her winter clothes to be made with my cloth, but I don't yet have her exclusive business. The Archduke's wife and their daughter had given out Renaissance titles, but mine hadn't chosen her own Renaissance. Now the other dyers were all ruthlessly vying for her attention. Still, she's going to pick new cloth next spring or summer, Eva said, her eyes full of motivation. Now that Camille can go to the forest, I'm going to spend even more time dyeing. Huh? He's going to the forest already? Yeah, I've been going all summer, Camille chimed in. Look what I got today. Brimming with pride, he started putting his loot in a neat row on the table. He hadn't made Mine's mistake of bringing home poisonous mushrooms or anything of the sort, and the fact he could carry a basket on his back meant he'd come home with an actually decent haul. Mine really was bad at everything back then. Yeah, she was. Impressive, huh? Camille said. Sure is, I replied, reaching out and mussing his hair. I'm going to the forest tomorrow. Guess I'll need to work extra hard to keep up with you. Camille grinned up at me, his eyes sparkling. Really? I'm going too. We've never been at the same time before. You're welcome to come with me if you don't mind bringing Dirk and Conrad. Oh, 5 years had passed since I started going to the forest with the orphans. The other kids didn't look down on them as much anymore, but the adults' minds were harder to change. It was no use trying to convince them from the outside. Mine had told us, which was why she wanted to take a more subtle approach to the Gutenbergs. It would take us some time, but we just had to show the adults that the orphans weren't any different from the rest of us. Dirk and Conrad are from Lady Rosemine's orphanage, I said. They've been playing with the same kind of books and toys as you, so you shouldn't lack for things to talk about. Mine's toys weren't exactly popular here, so I was sure Camille would appreciate the chance to hang around with other kids who enjoyed them. Tuuli had told me he was having a hard time relating to the other kids in our neighborhood. He loved the picture book Bible, but there wasn't much discussion to be had when nobody else in his social circle even knew how to read. Do all the kids there have picture books? Camille asked. Yeah. And they won't get mad at me for bringing up Lady Rosemine's toys? He had promised his dad that he wouldn't mention mine or any of the toys connected to her when speaking with his neighbors. It was a vow between men, as Mr. Gunter had put it. They love her too, so no, they won't get mad. They're probably better at karate than you. Okay, I'll go, Camille exclaimed, his eyes continuing to sparkle as he threw his hands up in the air. That was cute. How far have I gotten? Okay, 19 minutes. Okay, Raimund, Duchy and mentor relations. A sales bonus story for Part 4, Volume 6, set around when Rosamine went to Herscher's laboratory for the first time. The story elaborates on how Raimund's meeting with Rosamine led to his apprenticeship with Ferdinand. How does an Archduke candidate surrounded by guard knights appear to a men noble from another duchy? How did her Damn it. How do her actions become the basis for their decision-making? These are the questions I tried to answer with the story. I also made sure to sprinkle in some family circumstances and details about the Ahrensbach dormitory. You, what is your name? Huh? Raimund. I met Professor Herscher a year ago during one of my second-year brewing classes. Professor Gundolf, the man who usually led our practicals, had ended up being too busy to attend, so Professor Herscher had made an exception and covered the class for him. I remembered every detail of that first encounter, down to the glint in the eye behind her monocle. It wasn't rare for classrooms to merge and professors to be replaced when socializing season began and the year's final exams drew near. I'd never taken any of Professor Herscher's classes before then, so I wondered what business someone who usually taught other grades could possibly have with me. You might only be a second year, but you've taken an interest in improving magic circles and simplifying magic tools, is that correct? Yes, though it embarrasses me to admit it, I don't have as much mana as the average Mendo. My hope is to use simplification to make magic tools that require less mana. Written lessons were easy for me, but I couldn't say the same for practicals. During any class that required the use of mana, I seemed to run dry before we were even halfway done. The flow of my mana was poor at best, and when we had to brew, I spent most of the lesson drinking rejuvenation potions and waiting for them to serve their purpose. It only made sense to devote that downtime to studying magic circles. Professor Herscher picked up my notes on simplification and read them thoroughly. She placed a contemplative hand on her chin, looking up into the air, and then grinned. You seem to have a talent for this. Would you like to become my disciple? A stir ran through everyone in earshot, and a sea of shocked eyes came to rest on Professor Herscher and me. I couldn't blame them for reacting that way. Those kinds of opportunities were never extended to bottom-level mid-nobles. Even if I'd gone from professor to professor, asking them to take me as their disciple, they all surely would have turned me away in favor of students more likely to be brought into the sovereignty. She's making fun of me, right? If she actually makes me her disciple, everyone else would lash out at me in jealousy. What a pain. I gazed up at Professor Herscher, expecting the worst, but I saw not a hint of mockery in her purple eyes. It was the first time someone had ever genuinely acknowledged me. My mana was so underwhelming that not even my own family expected me to amount to anything. Unless I seized this opportunity here and now, I would spend the rest of my days completely unnoticed. My mind screamed at me to act. Yes, please, I would love to. I think that was the next page. Okay, yeah, it was. Welcome to my lab, Professor Herscher announced. Pass your final exams and you may use it as you please. The nationwide mana shortage has done much to increase the demand for more efficient magic tools. My first response to the laboratory was one of surprise. It was more cluttered than I could ever have imagined, but I quickly came to appreciate its strengths. I could write my thoughts as they came to me and set them down without having to fear my attendant trashing them the moment I turned my back. I could study non-stop until 6 bell rang. It really was a peaceful place to work. If only she'd given me proper answers to my questions. Professor Herscher wasn't one to hold my hand. She'd point to documents and tell me to find my own answers. Basic questions would earn me basic answers, and anything more complex than that would quickly turn into a lesson about how to figure things out on my own. I refused to answer not out of apathy, but because a researcher must know how to find what they seek, she would say. I will wish to raise you to the point that you can debate about research. Professor Herscher wouldn't deny that the mess in her lab was the product of her own laziness, but she refused the same to say about her teaching methods. The opposite was true, she claimed. The lessons she tried to teach me were all the result of careful consideration. In truth, not even the professor's laboratory was as it seemed. Though it appeared to be a mountain of garbage, it was actually replete with magic tools I'd never seen or heard of before. Even the small closet of sorts to the side of the brewing room was packed with tools and documents. You may research the magic tools here as you please, Professor Herscher said. Many of them demand excessive amounts of mana to use and will therefore be perfect for your goals. These two are safe. They are meant for recording and farsight respectfully, but take care not to touch the others without at least a basic understanding of their purpose. Many of the tools here are dangerous and meant for combat. Did you say one was for recording, I asked? How does it work? Do you remember the magic tool that I used during my lessons? The one that shows students their brewing instructions. It is an advanced form of that, able to record moving objects and then display them again. This is the first prototype if memory serves. It records moving objects? The tool used during Professor Herscher's lessons recorded written text and projected it over and over again onto white cloth. It seemed pretty useful to me, but none of the other professors had one. I never expected a more advanced version to exist. If that's just a prototype, is the finished product here too? I gazed across the mountain of magic tools. They were in such a heap I couldn't tell what was what. It's bound to be somewhere, but Professor Herscher gestured to the clutter around us. I haven't touched it in years, so I doubt you'll find it anytime soon. You haven't? Why not, when it has so much utility? I couldn't believe she had abandoned such a useful and original magic tool. Everything that boy made was an atrocious mana guzzler. Ah! So everything Ferdinand made needed a ton of mana. I wish to advance my own research, so I do not have the mana to spare for it. That boy, my other disciple, Ferdinand of Ehrenfest, he had quite the mind for inventing new magic tools and the talent to see them actually made. It was a terrible shame that I could not bring him to the sovereignty. His being an Archduke candidate meant my hands were tied. My interest was piqued. This man, who had attended the Royal Academy over a decade ago, had apparently taken the Scholar and Archduke candidate courses at the same time. He had approached the development of magic tools with immense passion and devised one completely original creation after another. Professor, where did Lord Ferdinand put his documentation when designing this tool? An apprentice scholar put the paperwork together, but Lord Ferdinand probably kept it. I suspect all that remains here are things he wondered about but quickly lost interest in, and notes simple enough for him to put together on his own. I really hope to read them someday. Lord Ferdinand's documents, I mean. I'd also like to speak with him so I could ask how he comes up with his ideas. A smile crept onto Professor Herscher's face as she began stocking books and documents. His papers and magic circles would all be too much for you as you are now. Strive to be able to parse and improve upon his work. But start by studying the basics. From that point onward, I spent almost all my time studying it. I never read so many books before, and the volumes Professor Herscher lent me contained an astonishing amount of knowledge. Under normal circumstances, books this rare and valuable couldn't be borrowed without some manner of collateral. For someone as poor as I was, even borrowing from the library was a challenge. On top of that kindness, when the academic term ended and it came time for me to return home, Professor Herscher loaded me with assignments to get me through before the next winter, and documents to help me understand them. I'd never been so glad to have homework in my life. Upon returning to Ahrensbach, I devoured the documents and solved the assignments given to me in quick succession. I told my family I found a mentor at the Royal Academy and that I one day hoped to move to the sovereignty, then devoted myself to my studies. They seemed to be at a loss for words, but the documents I showed them was clear enough evidence that I was speaking the truth. I continued to learn... I continued to learn from the resources my mentor had given me, examine the magic tools that apprentices used, and the magic circles engraved on them, and contemplated ways to simplify them as much as I could. My entire world had changed in what felt like the blink of an eye. It didn't even bother me when my family said I didn't have enough mana to move to the sovereignty. I was devoting my all to what I truly loved to do. Soon enough, I came to resent the passage of time. I was so absorbed in my work that meals and sleep became inconveniences more than anything else. For the first time in my life, I truly understood what it meant to be fulfilled. At the start of the next academic term, I returned to the academy as a third year and gave back the text Professor Herscher allowed me to borrow. I completed my written lessons as quickly as I could to maximize my time in the laboratory and then got straight to experimentation. My aim was to produce more efficient magic tools, and to that end I dissected complex circles and simplified them by organizing them into separate processes. The knowledge I had absorbed from countless books served me well, and the time seemed to fly with how much fun I was having. I wanted these days to carry on forever. And yet change came in the form of Lady Rosemine, an Archduke candidate from Ehrenfest. Now then, if you'll excuse me, she said, leaving the laboratory with her retinue once our meeting about improving magic circles had concluded. I waited until their footsteps faded, then slouched over and heaved a heavy sigh. So, Professor Herscher asked of me with a slight smile, what do you think of Lady Rosemine? She seems nice enough, but I couldn't bear the way her knights glared at me during my explanations. I'm relieved she left so soon. As much as I enjoyed getting tasty leftovers from Professor Herscher, my entire meeting with Lady Rosemine had felt like a near-death experience. I'd rather Archduke candidates waited on by knights not bully us lower-ranked nobles without anyone to protect us. Ehrenfest might not have been high enough in the duchy rankings to speak out against Ahrensbach Archduke candidates, but I didn't mean she'd use her status to antagonize men nobles. She wasn't. I'm just a lowly men noble, I said. I don't want to deal with an Archduke candidate from another duchy. I'm not sure what her reasons are, but I would rather nobles of her high status resolve their problems among themselves. Lay nobles and men nobles need only think about their own duchies, my mentor replied. Archduke candidates, on the other hand, must also consider interduchy diplomacy. I thought that life got harder as one's status decreased, but Professor Herscher assured me that even high-ranked nobles had their own problems to deal with. I found it hard to imagine, considering what I'd seen of Lady Detlinde in our dormitory. Oh god, her again. Professor Herscher, Lady Rosemont plans to visit us here on a regular basis, does she not? Must I spend my days being stared down by her guard knights, or will my being from Ahrensbach mean I can't be your disciple anymore? My time with Professor Frollo had made one thing clear. Dormitory supervisors allow their home duchies to sway them more than any other sovereign noble. If in his hatred for Ahrensbach, Ob Ehrenfest ordered my mentor to cut ties with me, she would surely have no choice but to obey. Were I closer to my Archduke, I could ask him to force Ehrenfest to take the order back. Given its lower rank, Ehrenfest would need to comply, but alas, I was a Met noble far from current trends. I wasn't even known as an excellent student. I just have everything stolen from me as usual. Worry not, no matter what Ob Ehrenfest says, I owe no debts to his duchy, and will refuse to follow any orders I do not agree with. Professor Herscher said, waving a dismissive hand without the slightest change in her expression. Her research had apparently been done with support not from Ehrenfest, but from her disciple, Lord Ferdinand. He understood my teaching philosophy well, she declared. Professor Herscher's composure brought me comfort even a day later when I was trying to decipher a circle on one of Lord Ferdinand's magic tools. I was hoping to create a tool of my own that could produce the same results with less mana. The display component functions like a water mirror, but to make it display the same thing over and over again... Professor Herscher, this is Brunhilde of Ehrenfest, came a voice from outside the room. I turned to look, then returned my attention to the magic circle in front of me. Professor Herscher seemed intent on ignoring the call, so I thought it best to follow her example. We always prioritized our own research, creating an atmosphere where the first person to acknowledge a distraction was the loser. You have a visitor, Professor, I said at last, trying to emphasize that this was no guest of mine. Professor Herscher was unmoved. You are closer. Open the door for me. In terms of power, I was at an unfortunate disadvantage, leaving me with no choice but to give up and open the door. Lady Brunhilde, one of Lady Rosemont's attendants, whom I presumed to be an archnoble, was waiting on the other side to scan the laboratory with a grimace, then straightened up and presented us with the board. Professor Herscher, she said, we humbly request that you have dinner with us tonight in the dormitory. Lord Ferdinand wishes to speak with you in person. Here is the invitation. My mentor accepted the board and skeptically examined it. Then she cast her purple eyes down. For what reason has Lord Ferdinand come here? Does an adult plan to influence the Royal Academy? Many of his magic tools are being kept here, are they not? Lady Brunhilde asked, scanning the room until her eyes fell on my current project. As their creator, he is duty-bound to dispose of them. She was right. Lord Ferdinand could do as he pleased with the tools he made, and the one I was currently attempting to decipher counted among them. How had she known it was his? Was it common in Ehrenfest? Not really, no. A chill ran down my spine. Lord Ferdinand would surely find it problematic for his tools and research to leak to another duchy, Lady Brunhilde remarked. In any case, Professor Herscher, we shall await you at 6th bell. And with that, Lady Brunhilde took her leave, as if she wanted to spend as little time in the laboratory as was necessary. I mean, it was kind of messy. She acted with zero respect for Professor Herscher. It suddenly made more sense why my mentor never wanted to be in her dormitory despite being its supervisor. Are you planning to go? I asked. I am. Ehrenfest came up with the perfect reason to dispatch Lord Ferdinand to the Royal Academy. As for what message he brings from Ob Ehrenfest, I will need to wait and see. Professor Herscher's voice lacked the confidence that had soothed my nerves the day before. It seemed to me that she was attempting to hide her shock. This is all because of me, I said. Fret not, Raimund, you're my disciple, and that won't change no matter what anyone says to me. Now, let us continue our research until 5th bell. Professor Herscher picked up her pen and returned to what she was doing before. I tried to go back to my magic circle, but I couldn't ignore the voice in my head. Are they going to make her give up on teaching me? Dread made me sick to my stomach. I read over my notes while doing my best not to show how uneasy I felt. What was I thinking about? My research had been going so well before, and now I was stuck. The magic circle seemed to distort in front of my eyes and move on its own. The element necessary for the display what was it again? Before, it had come to me in an instant, but now my mind was blank. I needed to continue my research, yet the harder I tried, the harder it became to concentrate. By the time 5th bell chimed, I was no closer to figuring out the tool than when Lady Brunhilde interrupted us. That's enough for today. This is a formal invitation, so I need time to make myself presentable. On that note, Professor Herscher showed me out of the lab so she could summon her attendant. I made my way through the scholar building and toward the library where I could read until 6th bell. My steps hastened as I drew near, but then I suddenly stopped in my tracks. Lady Rosemont had spoken so passionately about the library during our meeting the day before. She had claimed to go there frequently, which meant she might have been there today. I don't want to see her or her retainers right now, I thought, so I strode back to the Ahrensbach dormitory. Goodness, Raimund, this might be the first time this year that you come back before 6 bell, my attendant said upon my return, surprised to see me. I explained that Professor Herscher had told me to leave since she had important business to attend to, then went straight to my study desk, spread out several documents and pretended to study them. I didn't want to be in the common room where Lady Detlinde and her lapdogs had erupted in shrill laughter. 6 bell rang. Professor Herscher must have gone to the Ehrenfest dormitory. Maybe she had finished preparing early, in which case she'd probably returned to her research and received a few choice complaints from her attendant. I gazed outside my window but saw only a dark forest covered in snow. She told me not to worry, but I can't help it. Could anyone blame me? Lady Rosemine's guard knights had taken issues with me, and my mentor had been summoned to the Ehrenfest dormitory the very next day. What will I do if they make me resign? It was hard to imagine anyone else would take me as their disciple, as my father constantly reminded me my mana capacity was so low that had the Civil War's purge not decimated the nobles' population, I would absolutely have been sent to the temple. I think I was so close on getting my family's recognition. As we all gathered in the dining hall for dinner, I thought back to the food Lady Rosamine had brought to the laboratory. The leftovers Professor Herscher had given me had tasted shockingly delicious. Here in the Ahrensbach dormitory, the meals we received depended on our status. Archduke candidates ate better than the rest of us, a fact I sorely envied them for. Still, why is Ehrenfest so hostile to Ahrensbach? You have no idea, dude. Lady Georgine of Ehrenfest was Ahrensbach's first wife, and we had just married 2 brides into their duchy. I was used to hearing complaints about how much support Lady Georgine sent home, especially with Ehrenfest placed so low on the duchy rankings, but nobody ever mentioned anything that would explain Ehrenfest being on guard against us. You have no idea what had happened between Ehrenfest and Lady Georgine, obviously, since that's their business, so obviously you don't know what's happened, essentially. Is this a battle between Archduke candidates being framed as an interduchy conflict? I turned my attention to Lady Detlinde's group and watched them from afar while I ate. She was arrogant to her fellow students, even within the dormitory. Had she made use of her higher status to force unreasonable demands on Lady Rosamine? It's plausible. Higher-ranked members of lower-ranking duchies were known to target lower-ranked members of higher-ranking duchies, but still, I wish their squabble wouldn't interfere with my apprenticeship. I was so desperate to know how Professor Herscher's meeting had gone that I spent the night in agony, then rushed to the laboratory as soon as my lessons finished the next day. I opened the door to find the room shockingly empty. There were fewer documents on the tables and shelves, and the mountain of magic tools that had once kept us from closing the storage room had vanished. Lord Ferdinand really had taken back his things. On being completely rejected, I couldn't help but despair. At a glance, it was clear how strongly Lord Ferdinand opposed an Ahrensbach student seeing even one of his creations. My hopes of seeing his organized notes and speaking with him about his magic tools shattered into tiny pieces. Professor Herscher, I said. She was drawing a magic circle on a piece of parchment, acting as if everything was fine. Was it still okay for me to visit the laboratory as her disciple? Will my being here cost her access to the documents she needed or put her in financial trouble? I gazed all around the room at a complete loss for words. I could see the documents Professor Herscher had allowed me to borrow outside of term time, documents I'd read in their entirety, and crumpled up notes scrawled with my observations. My half-drawn magic circle was still spread out on the table. I thought of my work and made me want to cry. I didn't want to leave. I wanted to stay here, in this lab, and continue my research. I don't want to quit, I said. Excuse me? I said you were my disciple, did I not? Professor Herscher asked, pausing her own drawing to set aside her pen and gaze up at me. Her monocle glinted. Incidentally, how would you feel about having Ferdinand as your mentor? Come again? My ears must have deceived me. Not even in my wildest dreams would Lord Ferdinand agree to such an arrangement. Professor Herscher sighed. Yesterday he and I spoke at length about magic tools and the threat of valuable information being leaked. From there my mentor elaborated on our conversation. Because my specialty was modifying magic tools, not handling weaponry, the dangerous tools had needed to be cleared away. I was also told, though not in any real detail, there was animosity between Ehrenfest and Ahrensbach, hence the former's concern that its secrets might be stolen. On the topic of such leaks, we will need to have a serious conversation, Professor Herscher continued. Still, when I conveyed your fascination with his tools and your talent for improving them, Ferdinand took an interest in you. It would seem that as part of a recent report, Lady Rosamine requested that he show you his documentation. Lady Rosamine had spoken passionately about my achievements so far and recommended me without question. Thanks to her, I would start taking long-distance lessons from Lord Ferdinand. Of course, this all rests on you agreeing and passing the test Ferdinand intends to set you. If you can recall the task he gave Lady Rosamine as current disciple, then you know this decision is not to be taken lightly. His judgment is harsh and quick. My fortune had taken such a wonderful turn that I was lost for words. I remember the sensation from when Professor Herscher had asked to be my mentor. Still, this was no time to waver, I would sorely regret letting a chance this rare slip through my fingers. I was the one who had asked to speak with Lord Ferdinand about magic tools. The past year had taught me the joys of studying, something I was passionate about. I already knew how fun it was to be fully absorbed in my research. A test? I must put my all into passing it. The anxiety of such a trial was nothing compared to the dread of being forced to leave Professor Herscher's laboratory. In the latter case, my duchy and status were out of my control, but the result of my test was entirely in my hands. Please, I cried, please let me take the test. Okay, let's see. Hold on. How many more do I have? I'm at the Otto one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Okay, there's 13 technically left. Okay, let's try this. Let's do one more and then we'll finish for the night. Or the time being, I mean. Otto, winter preparations and a traveling merchant's request. A sales bonus story for Part 4, Volume 7. On the cusp of winter, Otto meets with an old friend from his days as a traveling merchant. It was fun having Otto return to the bar he used to frequent as a soldier, and the fact that Tuuli was able to bargain with him shows how much she's grown as a Laharl. I tried to touch on how traveling merchants feel about the changes in Ehrenfest's lower city, as well as Benno's and Otto's thoughts on Corinne, which Rosamund never had the chance to hear about. After taking out and changing into my old clothes, I called out to my beloved wife. Karina, I'm going out to meet someone. I'll see you later. Oh, Otto, should you not change into something more presentable? It's an old friend. To me, that meant someone from my days as a traveling merchant. I said goodbye to the kids, then stepped out into the cold. A bitter wind blew down my neck. Whew, sure has gotten chilly. I turned up the collar of my coat and got a move on. Thinking back, I'd been so busy over the summer that I barely had a chance to enjoy the heat. Now that the merchants from other duchies had gone home, and the women of the Archducal family had finished their dyeing contest, my store finally had time to breathe. Too bad it was almost time to start preparing for winter. The busy times would continue. Now, let's see what Dorm wants. Dorm, the reason I was braving the cold, had done plenty to help me during my days on the road. He was a traveling merchant known to wander between Ehrenfest and Frembeltag, a man I owed dearly for telling my parents how I'd come to marry Karina and what I was doing with the money I'd earned. As I reached Ebbo's bar, I thought it was the perfect opportunity to pay him back. During my days as a soldier, I'd come here all the time with Gunter. Now I'd spent so much time at the Italian restaurant, hosting the owners of other large stores, that I could never find a chance to go to any bars at all. It was busy at Ebbo's, but it didn't take me long to spot Dormer waving at me from a corner. I waved back and headed over to him. Ebbo, I called. One behale and a sausage. Well, if it ain't the owner of that big old store, Ebbo said. Never thought I'd see your face here again. Gotta admit, it's nice to be out of these fancy clothes. Can't stand the damn things. You got that right. Ebbo cackled as he took the large copper from my hand and replaced it with the wooden tankard full of pale beer. I took it straight over to Dorm's table. Hey, you Dorm, been a while. Otto, thanks for coming. The city's changed so damn much. Doesn't surprise me that you've changed too. One moment you're a soldier, the next someone tells me you're running a huge store. He let out a heavy sigh and offered me a seat. I shot him a slight smile, sat down, and then took a hearty swig of my beer. Traveling merchants didn't trade a vantol when drinking together. The gods didn't approve of our existence here. Still, the heck's going on, Dorm complained. I could tell that he was well in his cups. Didn't know a city could change so much in a year, though I thought I'd come to the wrong one at first. And it ain't just how clean things are. When I tried to dump some trash, one of the soldiers came over and started roaring at me about being against the rules. The heck was that about? Sheesh. Dorm's shock didn't surprise me. I'd seen plenty of traveling merchants react the same way to Ehrenfest changes. Sure wasn't easy to get used to, I said, and if we don't keep it clean, the Archduke will use magic to destroy the lower city. You can't be serious. Why'd you think the guards were on your back? They weren't too hard on you since you're an outsider, but be careful. If someone who lives here keeps breaking the rules, they can get banned from the city for good. Dorm grimaced. What a pain in the neck. There are plenty of downsides to the Archduke paying so much attention to the lower city. A lot of older people were pretty upset about all the sudden changes, but me? I thought that made things way more exciting. Otto, weren't you saying this time last year that you had purveyor merchants on the way? And what's with that being nothing interesting for sale? I thought there'd be something, what with all the new well pumps and such. Purveyor merchants were big-name merchants who did their business based on decisions made during the Archduke Conference. They were the opposite of traveling merchants who just wandered around without being registered to any duchy in particular. A saint of Arenfest woke up and got to work. That got us some attention from other duchies and hence the purveyors. But why'd you really call me here, Dorm? Can't have just been for a bit of gossip. Dorm didn't need my help to sell the goods he got from other duchies. He had plenty of stores to choose from. He must have wanted to make a request that only a former traveling merchant would understand and sympathize with. Still quick on the uptake, eh? Glad to see it. I won a hairpin for the daughter of a town chief who looked after me last winter. She loved the hairpins I was carrying last year, so I promised to get her a red one. Problem is, haven't seen a single one since I got here. This time last year, our shelves had been stocked with hairpins of all colors in preparation for the autumn coming-of-age ceremony and the winter baptisms. Now we didn't have a single one for sale. That's because the purveyors from Klassenburg and the sovereignty snapped them all up over the summer, bought as many as they could get their hands on. Now are busy trying to make them all in the order they were purchased. We're packed so tight that we might not even have time to get the girls of the city everything they wanted. Well, that ain't good. Then there's winter handiwork. Can't expect too much overtime when there's prep around the corner. Skipping on winter preparations wasn't an option. Well, not unless you had a death wish. And went with that saying that the hairpins would need to be put on hold, we could take our time making them when the snow picked up and trapped everyone indoors. Still, haven't forgotten my days as a traveling merchant, I said. I get the importance of having somewhere to stay for the winter and making sure everyone there is satisfied. For traveling merchants who had nothing but their wagons to their names, securing a place to stay for the winter was a matter of life and death. They also had to make their lodgings comfortable for everyone, though that fact wasn't quite as obvious. Being holed up for a long time made it easy for tensions to rise, and people sure loved to vent their frustrations on the merchants they were hosting. Dorm's winters would depend on whether he could win over the town's chief's daughter. Knew you'd understand, Otto. The problem is, our hands are full, and there aren't many outside our employ who know how to make a high-quality hairpin. The lady Dorm was trying to impress wouldn't be satisfied with a practice hairpin made by a beginner. She was the chief's daughter, one of the most important people in her town. Whatever she received wouldn't need to be good enough for a rich girl. Getting a hairpin of that quality was easier said than done, with our experienced craftspeople who were all too busy to help. In my head, I went through every rich girl who would order from us. My involvement in the store meant I clearly remembered each sale, but our workers who had made the hairpins had too much on their plates. Has anyone who can make those hairpins not been formally registered? Mine and Tuuli were behind the first one, so... Out of the blue, I remember the girl's mother, Effa. Not only had she been involved with mine's hairpins from the start, but she'd also helped Tuuli to make hairpins for Frida of the Offmer companies and Lady Rosemine's baptisms. She was exactly who Dorm needed, but would she really have the time? Lady Rosemine had ordered some of Effa's cloth after the dyeing contest, and the needs of the Archduke's daughter surely took priority over those of this other woman. One and only one person comes to mind, I said, but don't get your hopes up. She might be too busy. I'll take what I can get, please. There's going to be a huge urgency fee, mind you, especially with winter prep right around the corner. Got it. I accepted the fee from Dorm, then returned to the Gilberta Company. I would contact Effa through her daughter Tuuli and apprentice Harl at our store. So yeah, that's the situation, I said. Would be a big help if you could ask your mom for me. Tuuli had looked up at me and thought. I just brought her to my office and smiled. Sure, I don't mind. She finished dyeing the cloth and delivered it to the workshop, so I don't imagine she's too busy at the moment, and the extra large urgency fee is sure to win her around. In return, however, I need more maximum quality thread to be added to our next order. Tuuli, I don't quite get it. Why the extra thread? Tuuli had never tried to bargain with me before. I chewed over her request, feeling a little taken aback. We already had thread to match Lady Rosemine's divine colors. Was that not enough? To be honest, I wasn't sure I could get behind ordering maximal quality thread we didn't have immediate plans to use. Well, this is just my instinct, but I think we're going to receive another major order out of nowhere this year. We should get the thread now when it's easiest to acquire so we aren't caught short later. Sure, we have enough colors that suit Lady Rosemine's hair, but what if an order comes in for someone else? We prepared thread for every female member of the Archducal family. Are you telling me you want more in case some unknown person plans an order we have no reason to expect? Tuuli nodded, her eyes completely serious. It sounds unreasonable, but that's why I'm proposing it as part of an exchange. I really do have a bad feeling about this, which is why I'm working so hard to finish Lady Rosemine's hairpin as soon as I can. Yeah, she knows that there could be someone from the sovereignty or the royal family or whatever requesting hairpins, so she wants to be prepared for that just in case it happens. As crazy as her request sounded, Tuuli really had put a lot of thought into it. I couldn't deny how much she'd grown. It was hard to believe that just a year ago she trembled in fear when that order from the royal family came through. Seeing this young woman debut her merchant side was funny enough that I agreed to her deal. There was nobody else I could turn to in any case. Alright, I said, I'll start looking for the thread you want. Thank you. A day later, Tuuli returned with the good news, so I took her out to look for the thread she requested. I could have ordered it without her, but her knowledge of the luster, thickness, and whatnot that appeal to royals most couldn't be beat. We have barely any colors outside of those that suit Lady Rosamund and Lady Florencia, Tuuli said. That's what we're here to remedy. For obvious reasons, we'd only invested in thread we were guaranteed to make money from. Lady Rosamund purchased hairpins every season, so there were no problems there, and the thread we used to make accessories for Lady Florencia could also be used for Lady Charlotte, who had almost the same hair color. We wouldn't have that same security when ordering for customers who were, for all intents and purposes, imaginary. I muttered. In an ideal world, we'd get a wide enough variety to make hairpins for anyone who might ask, but we don't want to waste too much money on materials we can't repurpose for Lady Rosamund. Get 5 colors at most, okay? We can't go too crazy here. Tuuli hummed as she looked over the shop's wares. The thread nobles could use depended on their status. No matter how rich they were, there were boundaries they simply couldn't cross. Worst comes to worst, what if Lady Rosamund shows the hairpins to her friends from other duchies and markets them as having been... Damn it. Having been sold to the royal family, Tuuli mused aloud. It's a shame, but I doubt the members of top-ranking archducal families would ever buy ready-made accessories. Lady Rosamund's the only one who'd purchase a hairpin just because you made it. I really couldn't imagine nobles of such high status touching hairpins that weren't made specifically for them, especially when people would compare them to royalty. Even when Lady Rosamund had given hair ornaments to her fellow students to make an impression on the Royal Academy, she had ordered each one with the recipient's hair color and status in mind. Anyone buying hairpins made with maximum quality thread would want the color and design to be their exact preference. Still, not having enough would cause us just as much trouble as having too much. Remember how hard it was last winter when... over there! Tuuli rushed to pick up a pot of tiny beads, her eyes sparkling all the while. I'd seen the store owner nudge them into her peripheral vision. The owner of a button store came and sold them to me, he said. He figured you could use them for those hairpins of yours. That's a great idea, Tuuli exclaimed. They'd look just like morning dew if we stuck them on our leaves and petals. Can we buy them, Master Otto? The store owner grinned and said that he'd even give us a small discount. He was a damn good businessman. How was I meant to refuse? We'll get them this time, but I don't want to keep paying the intermediary fee, I said. Once we're done here, we can go make a deal with the button store. That's fine with me, the store owner chimed in. Beads aren't my thing. I don't want them on my shelves all the time. Once we purchased our thread, we went straight to the button store to buy all sorts of beads. The owner was extra pleased to have our business. There were so many cute things in there. Maybe I could even make better hairpins by matching little buttons and metal accessories, Tuuli muttered, clearly in a good mood. I didn't know enough about designing hairpins to add to the conversation, so I just looked around and said, Huh? Is that Benno and Karina? Or not Karina. Karen, sorry. Corinne, whatever. We just entered the north side of town from the central plaza, where I saw them head down a side road. My eyes couldn't have deceived me. Those brownish-red tresses must have belonged to Corinne. Not wanting to miss my chance to see something I could tease Benno about, I quickly followed them down the street. As I got a closer look at the two people ahead of us, I made a silent note that they really were Benno and Corinne. I couldn't tell what they were up to, maybe preparing for the winter or just taking a tour of the city. But they were pointing all over and chatting about something. Time must have brought them together because they looked much closer than when they first met at the Merchants Guild. Those two make a surprisingly good match, I said. Benno should quit grumbling about interdutchy relations and start thinking about marrying her, don't you think? She's way too young for him. I mean, isn't she isn't that much older than me. I don't think Mr. Benno would pick her. I seem to remember Corinne saying she was 16. She was a distinctive beauty with blue eyes and auburn hair. Tuuli was 3 years younger at 13, but she'd grown so much and acted so maturely that anyone would assume the two girls were the same age. Even so, I could tell at a glance that Benno was far more comfortable speaking with Corinne. Is that because she's technically of age? Maybe knowing Tuuli from a young age made Benno feel more like her guardian than anything else. Well, I agree that Benno won't choose her, I said. He's still in love with another woman, though I really do think he should marry someone else. Wait, what? Mr. Benno loves someone, Tuuli asked with widening eyes. You didn't know? Well, I guess I only heard it from Karina. It was an old story, not one I'd been around to witness, but I told Tuuli all about Benno's late girlfriend, Liz. We arrived back at the Gilberta Company before either of us knew it. Effa finished Dorm's hairpin much sooner than I'd expected. It didn't have any tiny flowers hanging from it, but the large petals resembled those worn by Lady Rosamund. I wrote on a small piece of card that the ornament had come from one of the women working for the Archduke's daughter, then gave it and the hairpin to my old friend. He wouldn't need to worry about his winter plans any longer. I was glad to have done a good job, but Benno must have felt otherwise. He stormed toward me with a grimace, ready to launch into a truly fierce lecture. He asked my kids to give us some space for a work-related discussion, he said, and urged them out of the room. I would need to thank him for letting me save some face as their father. Karina came and poured me some tea, though the air was too tense for me to enjoy it. I don't mind you keeping friends from your days on the road, but be more careful with what you do for them, Benno said sharply. We told some of our other customers that we're too busy to take their orders. What would they do? What would they think about this? People are paying close attention to your store, so start putting our customers in the city first. Benno was right, but my heart just didn't agree. Is it not more important to help someone avoid disaster? Our customers here might want hairpins, but their lives don't hinge on them getting one. I guess deep down I still got the mind of a traveling merchant. That's of no concern to me or anyone. People see actions, not thoughts, so shape up and stop being conspicuous. And while we're here, stop using Tuuli to reach her family. I doubt anyone will say anything, but it's better to be safe than sorry. Effa had a lot of eyes on her now that she'd won the dyeing contest and became Lady Rosemine's personal dyer. Benno didn't want any bad rumors to come from her helping me out, not to mention the risk that someone might question her connections to Lady Rosemine. Alright, I'll take more care going forward, I said. Now, if you're done with your lecture, I saw you two. Benno's eyes narrowed in response. You and Corinne, I mean. You two seem pretty close now. Imagine how good it'd be for business if you went ahead and got married already. Excuse me? We were shopping. Mark shoot us out so he could finish all the work he can't have her knowing about. On a previous occasion, Corinne had apparently been sent out with an apprentice. The two had gotten separated, so Corinne returned to the shop earlier than expected, causing quite a stir. Benno didn't know if she'd genuinely lost her guide or if she'd run away from them on purpose, but he'd taken to accompanying her ever since. I get that we need to prevent leaks, but it's still a real pain in the dick, Benno groused, crossing his arms in frustration. Mark's better than me at directing all the apprentices, so I've been stuck babysitting. Look, I said, my eyebrows drawn into a frown. I get that you don't want to look too favorably on Corinne when this whole thing's a plot to get you married. But I still feel bad for her. She's in a real tough spot here. Can't you be a little nicer to her? Corinne had grown up in a major store in the highest-ranking duchy in the country, yet here she was stuck in a backwater duchy with a man nearly old enough to be her father just because Ehrenfest had gotten a bit of attention recently. To make matters worse, the merchant she was stuck with had her turn her down to her face. Sure, Corinne's father sounds real pushy and arrogant, but that's not his daughter's fault. She hasn't done anything to the Plantin company. In fact, she tried to go home. But you told her not to since you were worried about her dying on the road. I think she's done pretty well for her girl everyone's set on guard against. Have you ever thought about how she feels? A rich daughter of a major store was being forced to spend an entire year as a live-in Lahand. If she went back to Klassenburg next summer, she'd surely be mocked for getting turned down and treated as used goods for having stayed in Ehrenfest. I could easily envision her father shouting at her for not being useful. On top of everything else, I was well aware of Corinne's financial circumstances. I dealt with her personally when she tried to sell all the spare clothes and accessories she had to get enough money to catch up to her father's boat. I doubted she made it through winter without being in debt to Ehrenfest. Or being in debt to Ehrenfest merchants. It might not seem like a big deal, but that's only because Corinne's so strong-hearted, I said. Someone less hardy might have taken her own life to escape what she's going through here. Yeah, I get that. Then... But I don't intend to make compromises. Corinne's and my store situations are entirely different. I won't marry her just out of sympathy. The Plantin company had risen up to working for the Archducal family through Lady Rosemine's support, whereas Corinne's store was owed money from a top-ranking duchy. Benno thought he was at an overwhelming disadvantage when it came to keeping information secure. I think you could manage, Benno. You have Lady Rosemine to think before you speak, Otto snapped, Benno snapped, glaring at me. Do you really think I can rely on Lady Rosemine for everything? She's fighting a tough battle to make things easier for us commoners, but her place in noble society is tenuous at best. She's not a full-blooded member of the Archducal family, remember? We have no idea how or when her position might change. I didn't quite follow. It seemed to me that Lady Rosemine was doing amazing in the Archducal family. She was engaged to the Archduke's son and seemed pretty stable to me. Lady Rosemine's situation is precarious enough already. I don't intend to add to her burden. Not to mention I made a decision to support her when I was still making my way in the world. I don't have the leeway to take anyone else under my wing. The top priorities are the Plantin company, the Gilberta company, and my promise to Liz. Why is he bringing up his promise to Liz all of a sudden? Talk about clinging to the past. I really want to know what that promise is. I swallowed those words before they could escape me. Benno's dark-eyed eyes were too sharp for me to drift joking around. Otto, I won't do anything that might put Lady Rosemine or the Archduke at a disadvantage against Klassenburg. I'll even get rid of Corinne if necessary. I really hope you don't mean killing her. Benno's resolve was painfully clear, and the look in his eyes reminded me of how he used to be. He was radiating irritation that made it impossible to get close. I needed to calm him down or else he'll end up losing his temper with Karina or Renate. Sorry, I spoke out of turn. I thought you were being too harsh to Corinne, but I see now that I've just made things worse. On that note, I finally reached for the tea Karina had poured for me. It was stone cold, but I sipped at it nonetheless. Benno exhaled, then picked up his own drink. Forget it. Maybe I should ease up a little. As you said, she hasn't done anything wrong. The cold tea must have cooled his head. Relieved, I set up my cup down. Alright, let's talk about winter. Tuuli told me she predicts that... I went on to explain her premonition. Benno grimaced, instructed me to prepare as much as I could, then started thinking about the Plantin Company's response. He was back to normal. Oh god. That's gonna have to wait till next time, guys. I'll see y'all in the next video.